Back in the summer, the John C. Campbell Folk School asked me to be their guest presenter for their annual Appalachian Week. A lot of you traveled. You come that week to see me, hear me during the public portions of the week so that you could listen to me talk about Appalachia. Thank you so much for coming. It was so nice to meet you. Of course, a lot of you couldn't come. It was much, much too far. So I said I would share those presentations that I did here on the channel. I've shared one. It was about the rich, colorful language of Appalachia. I'll link to that one in case you missed it in the description below and also at the end of this video. But the one I'm going to share today is also one I did that week. And I'm going to talk about how I used my passion for Appalachia, all things Appalachian, to really be my career. How I used cutting-edge technology to help celebrate and preserve that wonderful Appalachian culture and heritage. So you'll see me looking down. You probably already have. I have my laptop right here below the camera so that I can really stay on point and share with you the same things that I did there at the folk school, like a real presentation. So way back in 2008, I started my online endeavor to preserve and celebrate the culture and heritage of Appalachia here where I live. And it all started with a blog, Blind Pig and the Acorn. You might have heard that old saying, how even a blind pig can find an acorn every once in a while. Well, a lot of you, I say I have the very best blog readers and I have the very best YouTube followers, and a lot of you cross over. You do both. So thank you so much for that. Well, that blog started on March the 6th in 2008. It's really neat because that was Granny's birthday. Isn't that sweet? I didn't really plan it like that. That's just kind of how it happened. But all these years later, it's still going strong, which means in the blogosphere, I am very, very old. Most blogs don't last that long. And actually, it was interesting that I did the presentation there at the folk school because the folk school played a role in me starting the blog. During that time in my life, I was going through a really rough patch. You know, one of those where they say you want to crawl in a hole and pull the hole back in after you so you'll just be no more. That's kind of how I was feeling. But my daughters, a lot of you follow them too here on YouTube, the Presley girls. At that time, they were clogging for the John C. Campbell Folk School. So every Monday evening, they had clogging practice. I could go and listen to the rhythmic clogging of the feet and the music they danced to and kind of forget my troubles. Even better, I could do it right there in the historic Keith House, like the oldest building there on the campus, other than Farmhouse. I guess Farmhouse is older. But that was so wonderful because I could just imagine past generations of my family that had walked across that beautiful old floor. And of course it helped that no one on the clogging team knew about my troubles, so I could just lose myself in the stomping feet and the much too loud music and just pretend like everything was okay. Well, another clogging mother one day started telling me about her blog. She had a blog. I thought all blogs were political in nature or news related. You know, it was all serious stuff, but hers sure wasn't. She made soap, so she talked about that on her blog. She is an amazing quilter, so she talked about making quilts. And of course she talked about her family, her daily life and, you know, raising kids and things like that. Well, I was hooked. From her blog, I found other blogs that talked about daily life, being a mother, making a garden, sewing, making music. In other words, you could find someone blogging about anything under the sun. Well, I began to wonder, could I do that? Could I be a blogger? And could I talk about my Appalachian heritage and culture? You know, one that would showcase if I become a blogger, could I showcase my family's music, my artwork? At the time, I was a folk artist, Appalachian foodways, language, folklore, and more. Basically, you know, could I talk about all things Appalachian? Well, the Small Business Center at our local community college, Tri-County Community College, they helped me figure out how to actually start a blog, and then I was up and running. That makes it sound really easy. It wasn't easy. It was very hard. There was a huge learning curve because I had never done anything like that before. And although the center there helped me a lot, it was kind of new to them too, so they were kind of gathering resources for me and talking to different people, and they were a wealth of information, and they really did help me. I could have never done it without their encouragement, especially. They encouraged me. But it was harder than that, but I did accomplish it. I did start it. And of course, in the very beginning, I needed that name. I needed a name, and I wanted it to be special, memorable, meaningful, all those things. Well, my mother-in-law, Miss Cindy, a lot of you have heard me talk about her often. She had a friend named Larry, and he was just one of those people that kind of knew a little bit about everything. And she said, why don't you let me ask Larry if he could come up with just a list of names for you? And I said, sure, that would be fine. Well, he sent me a list of possible names, and there was the Blind Pig and the Acorn. I immediately liked it. But what did it mean? I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. So Miss Cindy told me about that old saying, even a blind pig can find an acorn every once in a while. I said, well, I've never heard that. So, of course, I went to Matt, and I said, Matt, have you ever heard this saying? He said, yeah, only my whole life. I said, well, I've never heard it, so I better go ask Daddy. So I ran down the hill to ask Pap, and he said he'd never heard it either. But he said it's the same thing as a broke clock is right twice a day. So I had a name. I loved it. I just jumped in with both feet, and my blog gradually found an audience and began to grow. Before starting, I was really hopeful that I would make money from the blog. That never really happened for me. Although, to be fair, I never really chased advertisers or sponsors. Even though I didn't gain anything really much when you compare it to all the hours of work I put into the blog and the cost of maintaining a website, hosting and things like that, what I did gain is just priceless. You know, a whole troop of people who care about Appalachia as much as I do, friendship that have continued from way back there in 2008 till today, you know, so over a decade, almost 2 decades at this point. All manner of treasures folks shared with me, from their family, from things they made for me, from things their family made for me, you name it, not to mention their wonderful stories and just their experiences. There were many that shared that I actually gave their life meaning. They felt like the old ways of our culture were looked down on, and I gave them the courage to be proud of who they were and where they came from. Now, I say proud, but that is purely the Appalachian usage of the word proud. It doesn't really mean that you're better than anybody else or anything like that. In Appalachia, we use proud to mean pleased. So in other words, to be pleased with their lot in life. You know, to be pleased that they sound like I do, that they eat corn and taters and cornbread, that they had a papaw and a mamaw that really influenced their lives. My daddy taught my brothers and me that, and it's really served us all well throughout our lives. Then there was just the satisfaction of working towards my endeavor of celebrating all things Appalachian. I enjoyed it all so much. A byproduct of that was documenting my family's music. Very musical family that I come from. I'm very blessed in that manner. So each week I wanted to share a picking and grinning in the kitchen spot, because when I was growing up, there was always, it seemed like, somebody picking and grinning in my kitchen, in Granny and Pap's kitchen. But to do that, you know, we had to film ourselves making music. We would have still made the music without the blog, but there just wouldn't have been any reason to document it. After my father passed away, Pap, he died in 2016, the realization of having all those hours of video of him really hit home for us, and we realized what a treasure we had created without even realizing it. My brother Paul told me that he studied on how such a treasure for all of us grew out of something so bad, so hard for me, you know, during that time in my life. During those early years of writing The Blind Pig and the Acorn, I went back to school, and I ended up working for many years at Tri-County Community College. The blog just continued to grow, and I continued to reach people around the world from my little desk in the dangerous room. If you follow me online, you already know about the dangerous room, but if you don't, I'll just tell you it's not really dangerous unless you're twin toddlers. Some of the people who subscribed to my blog only knew what they had learned about Appalachia on TV or in movies. I was able to show them the real Appalachia, not the pitiful cardboard cutout that's often held up to represent us. Over the years, many media organizations have contacted me to see if I know a rogue sheriff in my area. Maybe I know some moonshiners. Maybe I've seen the feral people or Bigfoot. Most of the time I ignore those inquiries, of course, but in the beginning, sometimes just for fun, I would write them back and say, no, I don't really know anything about any of that, but I do have a story I could tell you. I could tell you about my 2 nephews who grew up in an Appalachian holler and had scholarships to Yale. Would you like to hear that story? Of course, nobody wanted to hear that story. They were looking for the sensational. Others who just had a connection to the area enjoyed my writings because I reminded them of their family or because they lived a similar life. Both groups grew, and so did my subscribers. I'll skip ahead quite a bit to 2018. I had moved the blog to a better platform, and everything was going smoothly. I left the college to go work at the John C. Campbell Folk School in their marketing department. Another important thing that happened really that helped us in 2018 was Matt and I decided to get out of debt. Well, one of the first things we did was we got rid of our satellite TV, and we had to keep the internet though because of the blind pig and the acorn. I had to continue managing it. So we started watching a lot of YouTube. Just like the blogs I started reading back in 2008, we quickly realized there was someone making videos about everything. Matt loved the outdoor and hunting channels. I loved the gardening channels. And after watching some of them for, quite a while, we began to realize they were making their money from YouTube. That was their full-time living. Then COVID happened in 2020. The folk school was wonderful. I got to come home. I got to keep my job. I got to work from home, as well as I would go to school to help out with various projects the folk school did during that time to keep people engaged since they couldn't come and actually take classes. We did a lot of videos, a lot of presentations online for people. But spending that time at home made me realize how much I loved nurturing my family, my home, my gardens. Of course, Corey and Katie were grown by that time, but they still lived at home, and I just thrived being able to nurture my family as I worked from home. So Matt and I decided to try to make a living from all those years of work I had poured into maintaining the blog. In July of 2020, we started this Celebrating Appalachia channel. Back in 2008, when I'd first started the blog, we started a YouTube channel then too, called Blind Pig and the Acorn. It was needed to host that music I was going to share in the picking and grinning spot each week. Making money from it was never really a goal because we were focusing on the blog, and then so much of the music that we share is copyrighted, so either you don't earn any money or you would be sharing it with someone else. But we started that new channel, this one, so that we could share more about Appalachia. You think about all the years that I wrote blog posts. Well, we could take those blog posts and now make them into video form, just kind of take what I had written and make videos out of them. Our channel Celebrating Appalachia took off from the start, but we really had that advantage of having an online following that was willing to also follow us to YouTube. So by January of 2021, we were monetized, which means YouTube placed ads in our videos and we got a share of the revenue they earned from them. By this time, we had also achieved our goal of becoming debt-free. By July of 2021, I was able to leave my job, my full-time job at the folk school, and focus on celebrating Appalachia full-time, a real dream come true. I'd been dreaming about it all those years and it had just never worked, and I'd accepted that it wasn't going to. In fact, in the very beginning, I felt guilty. When I got that first paycheck from YouTube, I thought, me and Matt have worked so hard all these years. It's hard, you think about working full-time. You're like us, the same, I know, and you've got kids and you've got other commitments. We grow a huge garden. I was just thinking of all the time I'd I'd spent working so hard, never really getting ahead, and then this just seemed too easy. But then, as I studied about that a day or two, I'm a believer, so I believe it was the good Lord told me, made me see, no, I'd actually been working for nothing really since 2008. I could look back and see all the way that he had been leading me and guiding me to where I was at that point. So I had put in a lot of work. It just felt like when it was time, though, that's a God thing, right? When it's time, it just all goes smoothly. So our channel here continued to grow, and in August of 2023, Matt was also able to leave his full-time job and come home to help me celebrate Appalachia full-time. So I've really told you kind of the condensed story, and I'll share now a few technical details with you. You can find several videos too here on YouTube on our channel. I could link to a few of them in the description below, like one where we really go into depth about getting debt-free, one where I really talk about how YouTube changed our lives, so you can find more information in those videos. But in case any of you are interested in the technical pieces, back when I was starting in 2008, there was really kind of basically 3 blogging platforms. Today, there's so many options when it comes to starting a blog, and many of them are free. And I would definitely advise anyone who wanted to become a blogger to start with a free version, because you don't know if you'll like it or not, and there's no reason to spend money if you don't. I would also say, while I write about all things Appalachian, you could blog about anything, from promoting your artwork, whatever it is you make or sell, maybe you have a family business, or even documenting your family history. Blogger is one free option. It's owned by Google, so if you have a Google account, you're pretty much ready to go. The downside is there's not many frills or ways to customize the way your blog looks. There's a free version of WordPress that is very popular. Wix is another popular option, and the most up and coming at the moment, though, is Substack. I bet you've heard of Substack. So when it comes to the frequency of writing, let me go back just one more thing. Any of those that you're interested, it's a wonderful thing about YouTube, if you just put, how do I start a WordPress blog? How do I start Substack? You're going to find somebody talking about it. You're going to find somebody. In fact, I have a resource about Substack, so I'll leave that in the description below. I'm not on Substack, but I have a dear person that helps me do a lot of stuff that knows a lot about it, so I will leave that link in the description. But when it comes to the frequency of writing, that's really up to you. There's no hard and fast rules other than you really need to be consistent. If you choose to write once a week, then try to stick to that. When I first started out, I shared about 3 posts a week. Today, I post every day on the Blind Pig and the Acorn, but it took me a long time to get to that point and to feel comfortable and not be pushed to achieve that. Once you are an established blog and gain an audience, you can seek out ad agencies to monetize the blog, or even add e-commerce options and sell your creations from the blog. I never did either of those. I did have companies reach out to me, and if the ad fit, I entered into an agreement with them. Another option for monetizing your blog is to put content behind a paywall. Again, there are various ways to accomplish this, as well as different platforms that either work in conjunction with your blog or as a standalone option. But in today's world, video is king. The little computer that we all carry around in our pocket has made us all videographers to one degree or another. There are a few platforms that monetize video, but I'm only going to talk about YouTube because it's the largest, the fastest growing, and I believe the easiest to get monetized on. It's totally free to have a YouTube channel. In fact, if you already have an account that you watch videos from, you can start uploading now. Once you start uploading videos, YouTube has a few parameters you have to meet to be monetized. If you have 500 subscribers, 3 regular video uploads in the last 90 days, and 3,000 public watch hours, you can qualify for the first tier of earning on YouTube, which is to allow your followers, or just the general public, to send you funds as a way to support what you're doing. If you have 500 subscribers, 3 regular video uploads in the last 90 days, and 3,000 public watch hours, you can qualify for the first tier of earning on YouTube, which is to allow your followers or the general public to send you funds as a way to support what you're doing. They call them super chats, super thanks, very similar to a tip jar. You can also qualify for this if you have 3 million short video views during a 90-day period. To be part of YouTube's ad sharing program like we are, you need 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 watch hours in the past year, or 10 million short video views in the last 90 days. Now, all of those things change sometimes, so you definitely should do your own research, but at the time of when I did this presentation back in the summer, that was correct, but you should always check up for yourself. YouTube pays 55% of ad revenue to creators and keeps the rest. That's for long-form videos. For shorts, the vertical videos, YouTube pays 45% and keeps 55%. And many creators, including me, find it easier to make money from long-form videos than from shorts. The amount paid per ad is sort of difficult to understand, but YouTube pays by CPM, or per 1,000 impressions. Then there's RPM, revenue per 1,000 views. That's the rate at which they pay, and it fluctuates because of ad rates, viewer behavior, and just the algorithm of YouTube. YouTube also has a membership feature you can qualify for. That's a way for your followers to pay a monthly fee for additional content or just to support you. YouTube does take a cut of your memberships, your super chats, and your super thanks. And YouTube also has a sponsor program where they try to connect creators who reach a certain level. You have to reach a certain level to be available, to have this available for you. But they try to connect you with companies who would like to advertise directly in a video. I'm sure you've seen sponsored videos. Creators can earn a lot of money working with sponsors, but up to this point, that's something that we've not done. So now I'd probably give you more if you're not interested in the technical. You're like, I don't really care about none of that, Tipper, but I wanted to share it in case you were. But now, can I say that I've been successful with preserving and celebrating Appalachian culture and heritage by using modern technology? Is that something I can say that I've truly done? I've truly succeeded in turning my passion for Appalachia into a living and changed people's minds and preserved it? I believe I have. I really do. I believe I've achieved it. Currently, I have about 9,000 subscribers to the Blind Pig and the Acorn, where I share daily posts about my life here in Appalachia, as well as traditional music, foodways, Appalachian language, folklore, and more, all things Appalachian. On YouTube, we currently have over 318,000 subscribers, and our videos, it's unbelievable, I can't even believe it myself, our videos have been watched over 75 million times. Crazy. Although there are trolls online, my feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Many people thank me for keeping alive the culture and traditions they grew up with. They say I often jog their memory about something and make them want to revive the tradition and make sure that it's passed on to the younger generations of their family. Others are pleased to find out goodness abounds in the Appalachian Mountains, even though they've been told otherwise. As a believer, I can look back over my life since my rough patch happened and see the hand of God guiding me to the wonderful life I have today. Plugging away on becoming a blogger taught me a whole lot, as did working in the marketing departments of the college and the John C. Campbell Folk School. Today, in 2025, blogs might not be as popular as they once were, but they still are a dandy platform to get your message out to the world. YouTube has surpassed traditional TV viewing in the U.S., and more advertisers are turning to YouTube to spend their ad dollars. I'm often asked, is it too late? It's too late. I done missed YouTube. I done missed that bandwagon. But my answer is always the same. It's not too late. If you can find a following, growing on YouTube is still possible. One of my longtime Blind Pig readers, one of the ones that feels like family, Ron Stevens, he shared a comment when I announced the presentations that I'd be doing at the folk school. He said, "I'd sure like to hear your behind-the-scenes stories of your digital journey, but not the nuts and bolts of how it works, but rather about the human connections made. Digital is not necessarily cold, heartless, and unfeeling, as we here know very well. At its best, it is about so much more than numbers or selling or buying. Blind Pig and the Acorn is much like old-fashioned pen pals, sharing interests, experiences, and even needs. I sometimes envy you a bit, not for your success, but because you experience from the ground up the forging of a community, first of interest, but it outgrew that, becoming something more. The something more is what intrigues me the most." So I hope you enjoyed hearing how I used modern technology to preserve and celebrate my Appalachian heritage and culture, and how I really did use my passion for all things Appalachian to make my living. It took me a long time, took me and Matt both a long time to get to where we're at, but we did get here, and that's how. So I love Ron's comment, though, there, because it is, interesting to think about in our online world that we live in today. I'm just like everybody else when I think, that social media, there's got bad parts to it, and you think about, I've got 2 grandsons. I don't want them to grow up and be influenced by things online. I want them to be influenced things in the real world. But then here I am doing this to make my living. But I'm not just doing it to make my living. I feel like I really am making a difference. So many of you have told me that you live alone, that you don't have people in your life today as much as you used to, because maybe you're the last one living, you're the last one of your family, and I sound like somebody in your family. Maybe it was your aunt, maybe it was your grandmother, maybe it was your mother, maybe it was your sister. I feel like family, me and Matt do. Me and Matt and Corey and Katie and Austin and Paul and Granny and Ira and Woodrow. And so there's something powerful in that I can come into your living room, into your kitchen, like I was bringing the music from the kitchen of my childhood. I wanted to bring that feeling of people that you loved being in the kitchen making music, and people that knew you intimately, and, the clink of the coffee cup and the laughter, and sometimes the tears. I wanted to be able to bring that to share it with all of you, and I believe I have. And by doing that, I believe that I've also, in the process, kind of preserved the Appalachian culture and heritage that is so dear. There's certainly parts of it that, I'm so thankful for hot, warm water anytime I turn on the faucet. I'm thankful for indoor plumbing. There's a lot of stuff in the old days I don't want to go back to. But there are many things, thinking about the rich, colorful language, the foodways, the spirit of being self-sufficient, making a garden, the music, all those things that fit perfectly in our modern day lives, fit perfectly, and they should be celebrated and preserved. And I'm thankful to all of you that you let me do this. You let me have the best job on the planet, best job in the whole wide world, and I thank you so much for being part of it. I hope you enjoyed this, and you know that I'm always glad when you stop by to help me celebrate Appalachia.